Hello friends, this is Worm, and it's Tuesday, which means it's time for another Hot Take Tuesday, and we've got a pretty spicy one here. This is from Trixies, Kell of Cereal, so shout outs to the homie, because I don't even know if I necessarily agree with this, but we're going to play devil's advocate, and we're going to go with what he says here. But basically, Trixies believes that Destiny 2 needs some sort of seasonal character regression to curb the power creep and get away from bullet spongy bosses. Not only that, but sunsetting should also be brought back kind of in this loop as well. We're going to cover each of these topics, but obviously character regression, what is it? I mean, character regression is basically where your character's progress resets. And we sort of have that, like a tiny little bit in Destiny 2 through the artifact. Of course, as you play the season, your artifact gets more and more powerful, you get higher level, which makes a lot of stuff, actually I'm gonna take that back, I'm not gonna say that, but it makes, it brings your power up, you get artifact mods, stuff like that. And every single season, that artifact resets, your rank resets, you have to unlock the new set of mods that come with it and stuff like that. But Destiny's never had a true character reset outside of moving from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. That's the only ever character regression that I can think of that we've ever really had in Destiny 2. You could also make an argument for sunsetting, but I think sunsetting is a little bit of a different situation, and we're going to talk about sunsetting here in just a second. But with that being said, character regression, let me just talk about the ideas of character regression. So character regression, every single season, your Guardian's power is reset 1600, and everything that you have in your vault and everything you have on all your characters is reset back to 1600. Every single season it does that, and then you have to go in, you have to grind for pinnacles and powerful gear, stuff like that, prime Ingrams, whatever they're called, I can't remember, but you have to constantly be grinding these so that you can get your power up as high as it could possibly go, maybe, and then at the end of the season your powers are set. And this is not a new idea or anything. I know that there's other games out there that do this, but I think this would be an interesting concept for Destiny 2, and like we talked about, it would curb the power creep and it would move us away from bullet spongy bosses. So one of the biggest issues that I have currently with Destiny 2 is the fact that most of your difficult content is it's capped. The power is capped. For example, Grandmaster Nightfalls, your power is capped at like 1785. I can't remember exactly what it is. So as long as you're like 1785, you can do Grandmaster Nightfalls. And really, Bungie started moving towards this power cap a lot, and it almost feels like power is basically pointless at this point. Like, yeah, I have everything at 1810, but what good is that going to do me if my power is just capped and everything at 1765 or 1770 or 80, whatever it is? Doesn't do much. And I think that if we implemented, or I say if Bungie implemented this idea of character regression, they could get away from those caps. Okay, they could get away from those caps, and they could slowly allow Guardians to feel more and more powerful as seasons go on. So everything in the game, of course, base level 1600. Crucible, everybody's capped at 1600 with the exception of maybe Trials of Osiris. And Trials of Osiris / other PvP game modes, I think, would definitely need some independent tuning, as opposed to the idea of just resetting everybody at 1600 and uncapping your power. But with that being said, having everything just be unpower capped. So, your base level Vanguard strikes and your base level patrols, everything is at 1600. And then as you go up to, say, Grandmaster and stuff like that, that's when the levels get higher. So Grandmaster, as an example, could be an 1800 power level experience. So as long as you can get to 1800 power level or above, you're going to be dealing a lot more damage, you're going to be taking less damage and stuff like that from enemies. And I think that would be such a neat idea, and it would also kind of increase how do I say this without sounding too elitist here, because I don't want to sound too elitist, but it would increase the threshold of entry. But also, once you hit that threshold, Grandmasters become so much easier. And again, the balancing factor of this is every season it's reset. And so if you take, say, a Grandmaster and say, oh, well, Grandmaster is recommended 1840 power level, and everybody's reset to 1600 power level, yeah, I know that less people are going to be more likely to do it, because less people are going to be able to get to that level that you need to be. But at the same time, the players who invest the time into the game and who get to, 1830, 1840, 1850 power level, they're going to be smashing these Grandmaster Nightfalls. And honestly, Grandmaster Nightfalls, they already have such a low completion rate throughout the community anyways. I don't really see the needle swinging that much. You don't get a lot of casual players or new players jumping into Grandmasters. Like, typically, it's the hardcore players that are the ones jumping into Grandmasters, and hardcore players are the ones that would invest the time into Destiny 2 to get that level up to 1840, 1850, something like that. Now, of course, with that being said, Bungie would also need to increase like I don't know. I was about to say, I think Bungie should increase like the power level jumps you get between armor sets, but at the same time, over a course of 3 months, like if you're leveling up like 100 levels each month, that's gonna put you in a bracket, an easy completion bracket for these Grandmaster Nightfalls, because by the time you get to the last month of the season, or the last month and a half, or if you're really, really grindy, you could say the last 2 months of the season, you're gonna be able to grind out Grandmaster Nightfalls like nothing, like they were basically just average level strikes. Again, this is completely shifting up the current meta, because currently, when we're capped at our power level, it's whatever 18 or 1785, whatever the power cap is, like it doesn't feel rewarding to have an actual power. Like, what's the point of power gear? What's the point of being 1810 if everything's just going to be capped? What's the point of going for those really high seasonal ranks, 1840s, 1850s? I don't see a point in that currently, because there's nothing that we can actually use those values on that are advantageous to the Guardian. And so I think that Trixies' idea here really isn't too crazy, especially as I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm starting to change my mind. But moving on from there, of course, every season, your gear, all of it is reset to 1600 power level. But also, at the end of every calendar year, or every expansion year, so at the end of Lightfall, at the end of Final Shape and stuff like that, all the gear that comes from that year is sunset. It is locked. It is no longer able to go past 1600. And this is where I think a lot of controversy is going to come from, because I myself, of course, did not like the idea of sunsetting. I still don't necessarily like the idea of sunsetting, but at the same time, sunsetting did move the game forward. I mean, let's be honest, how many of y'all, if you still had access to your Black Armored weapons and your Pinnacle weapons from back in the day, how many of you would realistically be keeping some of the newer weapons that we're getting? Realistically, not a lot of you. Like, I don't know, I know me, once I get a god roll on something, I keep that forever. I'll keep it forever. Like, I still have stuff from like season of Arrivals that I use like regularly, because it's so good. Like, what's the point of getting something new if this is already fantastic? There's not one. And so that's why Bungie, if they sunset everything every single year, made every player start completely from scratch, you could make Destiny feel like a brand new game. A whole new power grind throughout the year, a great new expansion. I would even argue that if you're sunsetting this old gear, you could bring back some of the stuff from previous seasons and previous years in Destiny 2, because that was another, that's another thing that people complain about, is the fact that the Destiny content vault exists. Like, literally, if you buy Destiny 2 at like a disc copy at like a game, and it's telling you about how like, oh, you got to go kill Gaul, like, you're not going to experience any of that. And that's wild to me. But I think that, potentially sunsetting weapons frees up the space, or whatever it is, whatever reason Bungie has. Because I think at one point they said that, like older consoles can't handle the amount of, stuff in the game, and it would be too big, blah, 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 something like that. And so maybe sunsetting old weapons and encouraging players to dismantle old weapons would help to bring back some of that stuff. But with that being said, of course, there are some exceptions to what would be sunset. Number one, exotics. No exotics would be sunset. Keep that in the game. Also, raid gear, and I would even argue dungeon gear as well. Maybe you could make an argument for like Trials of Osiris. Like, basically any end-game loot or anything craftable as well is not sunset. So if you go into Last Wish and you get your perfect roll on your Chattering Bone. You don't get the weapon pattern or anything, but you just get the perfect roll. That wouldn't be sunset. And this would do two things. Number one, it would increase the value of these weapons that you get. So it would increase the value of raid weapons. I know that one of the things we talked about last week in the Black Armory video was that we have weapons that are comparable to the Black Armory weapons. But some people had said that things like, for example, Chattering Bone is not in a great archetype. That's why it's not used very much. But if Chattering Bone is the only pulse rifle in the game, for example, that can get, or the only weapon in the game, not just pulse rifle, but the only weapon in the game that can get Rampage and Kill Clip, or something like that, or Kinetic Tremors, Kill Clip, whatever combo you want to bring up, like it would instantly increase its value. Not only that, but it's not sunsetting. So if you have a perfect Chattering Bone that you just love with Kinetic Tremors, Rapid Hit, whatever combo you want, you could bring that and it would bring its value up substantially. Because, oh wow, I just got this really cool Belisarius D. Well, actually, no, Belisarius wouldn't be a good example because I think that would be one that should probably carry over because it's technically kind of an in-game weapon. But let's say you get a random world drop pulse rifle, the Psi Hermetic. It's got a perfect roll. Oh my gosh, it's so good. At the end of the year, it's sunset. It's gone. It's not going to be useful, but Chattering Bone is still going to be there, still going to be tried and true, still going to hold its own, blah, 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 stuff like that. But the other thing that it would do is it would increase the sense of grind that people have, because world drop weapons are now constantly refreshing. And we already know that every single season we get a host of new weapon drops and stuff like that. But I think that Bungie, if they're sunsetting weapons one year, they could sunset some weapons from that year, do a whole different set of weapons, and then the next year they could go back to those older weapons, and you could have like a ton of world drop weapons just dropped into the world, and you could increase the drop rate of these world drop weapons. That way you have players have that sense of grind, especially that sense of grind we had back in Destiny 1, where it's like, man, I really want this God Roll Lord High Fixer. It's a D1 weapon, but I really want this God Roll Lord High Fixer, and I'm looking for it, and blah, 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 and all this stuff, but it's eluding me. And currently, I know there are people still out there that are looking for their perfect world drop weapon rolls. This could be one of the answers to that issue. Everything's being sunset, but you get a lot more weapons. That way you can potentially get whatever God roll you're looking for. If you're looking for, say, a Psi Hermetic with Outlaw and Headstone, you're much more likely to get it. And you could have that for the rest of the year, and it could be an absolute blast to use for the rest of the year. None of that, but I think that if Bungie, if they sunset old weapons or sunset weapons after each year, you could have a really interesting, like you could uncap some of the power that some of these weapons have. Kill Clip, for example. Kill Clip's damage was nerfed a couple seasons ago. You could undo that nerf. You could undo the nerf to, say, Rampage. Rampage used to get you up to 66% more damage. Now it caps at 30%. You could change these and you could uncap these because, hey, after a year, they're gone. And this was the principle, in my opinion, as to why they introduced sunsetting in the first place anyways, is because pinnacle weapons, things like Mountaintop and Recluse and 21% Delirium, were so strong and so good that literally, if they existed today, I guarantee you, nobody would use anything else. Like Mountaintop was so strong. It's been the recipient of several nerfs. It is still so strong. Recluse's Master of Arms perk is so good. It is such a good perk. Why would you move away? Why would you move away from it? Pardon me. But why would you move away from it if it's that good? And sunsetting every single year could increase the viability of these pinnacle weapons. Like, you get an insanely cracked out world drop roll. Let it be super powerful, Bungie. Let Headstone detonate in like a 12-meter radius and absolutely nuke a room. Because guess what? Next season, that weapon is gone. Or, something like that. And maybe not to that level of power, but you could increase the power on certain things, because at the end of every single year, Bungie could bring in a whole new set of weapons with a whole new set of perks. Say, hey, Rampage was really fun last year, but we're going to bring in a whole new weapon set. No Rampage. None on any of it. We'll have different perks. You got Adrenaline Junkie, Swashbuckler, stuff like that, but Rampage is gone. Same thing with like Kill Clip and stuff like that. Like, I think that Bungie could potentially bring those in and uncap our power. And of course, it would help with bullet spongy bosses every single season, or with the season that we have, with the model that we have of capping players' power levels. Bosses feel like sponges, like they're not fun. You know, God, what was it? Lake of Shadows is like, just it's the most boring strike boss ever, like Grandmaster strike boss ever. Now the entirety of the strike, in my opinion, is very fun up until that final boss room, because the final boss room is just, he's a bullet sponge and there's nowhere to go, and you just kind of have to nuke him as fast as you can, and that's not really engaging. And I think, again, if you remove you reset everybody's weapons every year, you reset everybody's power every year, give us the ability to become a guardian, a true guardian, we wouldn't have to have bosses with insanely high health pools. If your power is high enough, just shred a boss. And I don't know why Bungie is so averse to having, like, letting players have the ability to just decimate bosses or champions. Like, champions they have a ton of health, and again, I'm not saying that champions have too much health or anything like that, but it does get old. That's one of the reasons why I don't play Destiny very much currently, is because the season's over, of course, got everything, but also, like, it's boring to just kill champions, it's boring to kill bosses and stuff like that. Like, I want that power where I can go into a strike like I could in D1, and I could nuke a boss potentially, or early days of D2. I could nuke a boss, get a roll, or get a weapon, hopefully it's a god roll. If it's not, though, I'm right back in it doing it again. And yes, I know people, they still grind nightfalls, Grandmaster nightfalls and stuff like that, but you know, if you brought in this power regression every season, I think that you could definitely lower bosses' health, maybe, you know, and this is totally unrelated to the character regression, but maybe also you could add some new mechanics to bosses so that it's not just like bullet sponges and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the I mean, that's kind of all I really wanted to talk about, you know, character regression every season. And again, I think that this would, the one problem I could see happening with this would potentially drive casual players away, because casual players like, oh, I worked so hard, I got all the way up to 1800, it took me literally till the last day of the season, and then it's all just boom, resets. Maybe that's not a good idea, but I don't know. Like, I think Destiny's already in a pretty rough spot as it is. Its player count's really low, so yeah, I don't know. Bungie, and I'm sure Bungie, they're smart enough to design it so that it's still rewarding to the casual player, but it could be more rewarding to the hardcore player. But yeah, that's the hot take Tuesday we have. Of course, Trixies, Kell of Cereal, thank you for that, because that is a spicy one, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that do not like the idea of sunsetting being brought back to the game, but I think that Destiny could use sunsetting back in the game to reset our our roles and increase that grind again. And of course, the character regression each season could also help to increase that. But of course, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think about the character regression? What do you think about sunsetting? Did you like it when it happened? Were you around when it happened? Because I know there's a lot of you who started after sunsetting. You don't necessarily know the struggle that sunsetting was, but yeah. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Of course, do me a favor, like the video, helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, and do me a favor, watch the videos you see here on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you will like them. Guys, I'll catch you all next time. Bye for now.